I always believed I had built a solid life. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old and I live in Austin, Texas. When I married Nathan at 24, I was sure he was the love of my life. He was charismatic, hardworking, and seemed to adore our family. I gave up a lot to support him. I worked part-time to take care of our two young children, while he chased his dream of starting his own company. Every sleepless night, every tight budget, it all made sense to me because we were together, fighting side by side, but there was something I didn't see. Or maybe something I didn't want to see. Over time, Nathan started coming home later. He said it was meetings, demanding clients, unexpected trips. And I believed him. After all, I was the devoted wife always saying, "It's going to be okay." Until one day, everything fell apart. And it all started with a simple phone call. The new babysitter, a young woman named Chloe, was just 22. I hired her to help during the busy afternoons. She seemed sweet, gentle, but there was something in her eyes that unsettled me. Though I couldn't explain why, that afternoon I came home early. I had forgotten an important document at the office and knew Nathan wouldn't be there. Or at least that's what I thought. I opened the door quietly, walked in without making a sound. And that's when I heard laughter coming from the living room. Intimate laughter and Nathan's voice, along with Chloe's, frozen in the hallway. I heard him call her my love. In that moment, the ground vanished beneath my feet. My world began to fall apart. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the beginning of the biggest turning point in my life. I stood frozen in the hallway, feeling my heart pound so hard it felt like it might explode inside my chest. The laughter continued. That intimacy, it was far too obvious to be misunderstood. And the worst part? His voice was soft, affectionate. A voice I hadn't heard in a long time. I took a deep breath, trying to pull myself together. But my hands were shaking. I walked into the room with my face burning. And the moment Nathan saw me, he turned pale, like he'd seen a ghost. Chloe's eyes widened and she bolted, nearly tripping over her own feet. Nathan tried to say something, but I raised my hand. "Don't even try," I said, my voice steady, even though I was breaking inside. He tried to cover it up, saying it was a misunderstanding, that Chloe had emotional issues and was confused. I laughed. A bitter, painful laugh. "So she's crazy, and you leave her alone with our kids?" I asked, staring him down. He stayed silent. He knew there was no excuse that could erase what I had just heard. That night, he slept on the couch, and I, alone in our bedroom, cried quietly, trying to understand where I had gone wrong. How could I have trusted someone who now seemed like a stranger? The next morning, Nathan acted like nothing had happened. He brought me flowers, made breakfast, kissed the kids like he was the perfect father. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't blind anymore. I was starting to see all the little signs I had ignored for so long. And in that moment, I made a vow to myself. I wouldn't be the passive, betrayed wife. Not this time. What Nathan didn't know was that I was about to uncover much more than just an affair. In the days that followed, Nathan tried to keep up appearances. Kisses on the forehead, texts throughout the day, even small gifts. But I wasn't fooled anymore. It was as if every kind gesture hid a layer of guilt. Chloe didn't come back to our house, and he said she had decided to go her own way. But something didn't add up. I needed to know more. I started paying close attention to everything. One night, I grabbed Nathan's phone while he was sleeping. The password was the same as always. A combination of our anniversary. Ironic, right? The same date that once marked the happiest day of my life was now the key to my pain. On his phone, the messages had been deleted. But in a careless moment, he had forgotten to log out of his email. And that's where everything began to unravel. There were messages to a woman named S. It wasn't Chloe, it was someone else. And based on the dates, they'd been emailing for over a year. He wrote that he was almost free, that things were getting sorted out, and he promised to start a new life with her soon. My stomach turned. He hadn't just cheated on me with Chloe. She was just another chapter. There was another woman, one he truly loved, and me? I was just the obstacle between them. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to control the panic. The Nathan sleeping next to me was no longer the man I had married. He was a stranger with too many secrets. But if he thought I was going to stay silent, he was very wrong. The next morning, I made everything seem normal. I made coffee, wished him a good day with a soft smile, and even kissed him before he left for work. But inside, something had changed. I was no longer the naive and hurt wife. I was a woman ready to play the same game and win it. I spent the day gathering information. I dug through old accounts, forgotten papers in drawers, bank statements, and that's when I found a second credit card in his name, one I had never known about. I called the bank, pretending to be him, just like I'd done a few times before to handle small things. The representative confirmed it. That card was used regularly. At hotels, expensive restaurants, gifts. Most of the charges were outside our city. And always on weekends, he claimed to be on business trips. My blood boiled. I went back to the email, dug deeper, opened attachments, photos, and there she was, the woman on the other side of the story. Brunette, younger, with a bold look in her eyes. In one of the pictures, she was wearing a necklace I had bought for him years ago. He was giving her pieces of my life. That night, I barely slept. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't cry. Instead, I wrote, I planned. I was going to find out everything. Every lie, every detail. And then I'd make him deeply regret underestimating me. The game had begun, and I was holding the right cards. That week, every detail became a clue. I started paying closer attention to his schedule. He left the house every day at 7:15 a.m. and claimed he returned at 6 p.m. But sometimes he got home later, giving weaker and weaker excuses. I began tracking his movements with the help of a trusted friend who worked at a tech company. She discreetly managed to install a small tracker in his car, and in less than 2 days I had access to his whereabouts. What I discovered made my stomach turn. He spent most of his day away from work, at addresses that had nothing to do with meetings or professional obligations. One of them caught my attention, a condo in a middle-upper-class neighborhood that he visited frequently. The following Friday, I waited for him to leave, got in my car, and drove to the address. I watched from a distance. It didn't take long before I saw him arrive, holding a bouquet of flowers. He knocked on the door, and the woman who answered was the same one from the photos. She kissed him on the lips, laughed with him, and pulled him inside. I felt betrayed again, but this time it was different. It wasn't a surprise, it was confirmation. And more than anything, it was proof that he had built a double life, lying to me every single day. I returned home with my mind on fire. This wasn't just an affair. It was an entire play he had been performing for months. And now that I knew exactly where the stage was, he had no idea that his days as the main actor were numbered. After seeing the betrayal with my own eyes, the pain turned into unshakable focus. I wasn't going to confront him yet. That would be too easy. What I wanted was to expose every lie, turn the tables, and make him taste his own manipulation. I started working behind the scenes. First, I found a divorce lawyer who specialized in infidelity and hidden assets. She was straightforward. If you want to come out on top, you need evidence, a lot of it. I followed her advice to the letter. I installed hidden cameras at home and started recording some of our conversations, always keeping calm. I pretended to be the devoted, understanding wife while inside, I was carefully planning every step of my revenge. With the help of a tech-savvy friend, I accessed his hidden bank records. We discovered he had opened a separate account and had been transferring money from our joint assets for months. He was getting ready to leave me with nothing, as if I were disposable. Meanwhile, he continued living his double life, unaware that I knew everything. He'd tell me he had to work on Saturday, and I'd pretend to believe him, only to later track his location and see he was at his mistress's house. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt strategic. I was cold, calculating, and more determined than ever. And while he drowned in his own lies, I was laying the groundwork for the final blow. And it would be epic. It was just a regular Tuesday for him. He woke up, took a shower, gave me a cold kiss on the forehead, and left for work. Little did he know that on that very same day, I would put the first part of my revenge into action. Through a friend who worked at an event company, I found out he was planning to take his mistress to a romantic dinner at a fancy restaurant in town. I booked a table nearby, hired a discreet photographer, and went in person to witness the scene with my own eyes. He was laughing, holding her hand, saying the exact same words he used to say to me years ago. The photographer captured everything, and me? I stayed strong, without shedding a single tear. I was exactly where I needed to be, in control. The next morning, I prepared an envelope with all the evidence, photos, screenshots of messages, bank transactions, and sent it to his office. With one handwritten sentence, "You always thought you were smarter. Today you find out otherwise." It didn't take long for him to call me desperate. But I didn't answer. He needed to feel the weight of the consequences without me holding his hand. After all, those who plant lies reap ruin. And that was just the beginning. When he came home that night, he was unrecognizable. Sweaty, trembling, eyes wide open. He slammed the door and started, calling my name like I was the one to blame for everything that was happening. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted. "Sending those photos to my job? To my family? What do you want to ruin me?" I stayed calm. I was sitting on the couch, a glass of wine in my hand and the TV remote in my lap. I looked at him and said as calmly as possible, "I don't want to ruin you, Nathan. You did that all by yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror." He started pacing back and forth, saying that the company was investigating the case, that his mistress, who, by the way, was also married, was now threatening to tell her husband everything. Chaos was starting to spread. He still tried to convince me to let it go, said it was all a mistake, that he loved me. I almost laughed. The same man who ignored me for months was now saying he loved me. No, that was fear. Fear of losing everything. And that was only the beginning of his hell. I still had much more planned. The days that followed were a true roller coaster for Nathan. The company suspended him temporarily, while they conducted an internal investigation. His image, once so clean and flawless, started to crumble. He tried to keep up appearances, but I knew he was falling apart inside. He started sleeping poorly, lost weight, and his phone wouldn't stop ringing. The mistress, now desperate, started messaging me too, begging me to stop everything, as if I were the one who started this mess. I didn't respond. Silence is the loudest sound when guilt is already screaming in someone's head. One night, Nathan tried to make a romantic dinner at home. He brought flowers, wine, played soft music, as if that could erase years of betrayal. I sat at the table, listened to everything he had to say, and in the end, I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You're not sorry. You're just desperate." He cried. For the first time in years, he cried in front of me. But it wasn't for me. It was for himself, for everything he was losing. And little did he know, the worst was still yet to come. The next morning, I made everything seem normal. I made coffee, wished him a good day with a soft smile, and even kissed him before he left for work. But inside, something had changed. I was no longer the naive and hurt wife. I was a woman ready to play the same game and win it. I spent the day gathering information. I dug through old accounts, forgotten papers in drawers, bank statements. And that's when I found a second credit card in his name, one I had never known about. I called the bank, pretending to be him, just like I'd done a few times before to handle small things. The representative confirmed it. That card was used regularly. At hotels, expensive restaurants, gifts. Most of the charges were outside our city. And always on weekends, he claimed to be on business trips. My blood boiled. I went back to the email, dug deeper, opened attachments, photos, and there she was, the woman on the other side of the story. Brunette, younger, with a bold look in her eyes. In one of the pictures, she was wearing a necklace I had bought for him years ago. He was giving her pieces of my life. That night, I barely slept. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't cry. Instead, I wrote, I planned. I was going to find out everything. Every lie, every detail. And then I'd make him deeply regret underestimating me. The game had begun, and I was holding the right cards. That morning, I received the confirmation I needed. The company's internal investigation concluded that Nathan had violated several ethical rules, and not just because of the affair with his coworker. There was also evidence of misuse of company resources to pay for dinners, trips, and gifts for his mistress. He was fired for just cause. When he got home with slumped shoulders and empty eyes, I was already waiting for him with a folder on the living room table. Inside were the divorce papers. "Sign it," I said firmly. "There's nothing left here for you." He tried to beg, tried to remind me of the good times, but it was far too late. I no longer felt love or anger. I felt relief. I had set myself free. The signature was just a formality. The real freedom had come long before, when I decided I wouldn't settle for less than I deserve. And just like that, with my head held high and my heart at peace, I turned the page on my life.